stop what you're doing right now, because the footage that just leaked of Draymond Green and Austin Rivers going at each other is spreading across the internet faster than anything we've seen in the NBA this offseason. And once you see what was said, once you hear the exact words these two men threw at each other, you are going to understand why the entire basketball world is losing its mind right now. This isn't two guys throwing soft punches in a press conference. This is deeply personal. This is family being brought up. This is careers being dragged through the mud. This is one of the most raw, unfiltered, back-and-forth feuds we have seen between two NBA men in years. And the craziest part? It started over something that had absolutely nothing to do with Austin Rivers. Stay with me all the way to the end of this video, because by the time we get there, you're going to understand exactly why this beef is far from over, and why the next chapter of this story might be even wilder than the one that just went viral. Let's get into it. To understand how Draymond Green and Austin Rivers ended up in one of the nastiest verbal wars the league has seen in recent memory, you have to go back to the spark that lit the whole fuse. And that spark had nothing to do with Austin Rivers at all. On the April 29th episode of The Draymond Green Show, Draymond made a statement that sent shockwaves through the basketball community. He said, and I'm quoting directly here, "As much as Steve has done for me in basketball, part of me thinks he's hindered me in my career and what I could have become. When I think of who I was offensively as a player and who I became, I think part of that is due to him."
As much as he's done for me in basketball, a part of me think he's hindered me in my career and what I could have become. But what he's also helped me become. Like, you gotta take the good with the bad, man. You know, when I think of who I was offensively as a player and who I became, I think a part of that is due to him.
Now, let me be clear. Draymond wasn't trashing Steve Kerr. He was nuanced about it. He acknowledged he has nothing but love for Kerr and understands the coach helped him reach a championship level in the NBA. But the moment he said the word hindered, the internet caught fire. Every analyst, every talking head, every former player with a microphone had an opinion. And that's where Austin Rivers walked in. Rivers appeared on the Dan Patrick Show and flipped the entire argument. Rather than seeing Draymond as a victim of the system, he framed Green as its biggest beneficiary. He said, and this is the quote that started everything, "You were the luckiest basketball player I think I've ever seen. You were drafted to a franchise with a Hall of Fame front office, Hall of Fame coach, the greatest shooter of all time, and perhaps a top 5 player of all time. Not to mention one of the most lethal scorers of all time, and arguably a top 10 player of all time, Kevin Durant, the same guy you chased off because you talked too much. Steve Kerr made your career. How dare you?" Those last 3 words, "how dare you," were the match that lit the gasoline. Now here's what you need to understand about why this hit Draymond so differently than your average media criticism. It wasn't coming from some analyst who never played the game. It was coming from a man who was drafted in the same class as Draymond Green, a man who played in this league for 11 years, a man who, in Draymond's eyes, had no business talking about anyone else's NBA career, and Draymond was not going to let that slide. Before we get to what Draymond said back, and trust me, what he said back is brutal, you need to understand that this isn't the first time these two have had friction. There's actual documented history here. In a 2021 preseason game, when both players were still in the NBA, Draymond Green received a flagrant 1 foul for kneeing Austin Rivers in the chest while attempting to block a shot.
He's trying to fly by and punch his right arm. Oh, it was his quad.
That's not an accident. That's the kind of physical moment that plants seeds of tension between two men, and those seeds can sit dormant for years before they bloom into something like what we're seeing right now. The two share history as players who were drafted to the NBA in the same class. They played against one another for over a decade, and that's exactly what makes this so combustible. These aren't strangers talking about each other from a distance. These are two men who looked each other in the eye on NBA floors for years, who know each other, who have context on each other, and when you have that much shared history, when words start flying, they carry a lot more weight. Now let's talk about who these men are, because that contrast is a huge part of the story. Draymond Green went on to win 4 NBA championships with the Golden State Warriors. He became one of the most decorated role players in league history, a future Hall of Famer, a man who, despite never being a primary scorer, built a legacy that most NBA players could never dream of touching. Austin Rivers, picked 10th overall in the 2012 draft, a lottery pick, had a solid 11-year NBA career. But at some point, the playing days ended, and he transitioned into media, doing podcasting and analyst work. Now, with Rivers in the media and Green still on the court, the fire has been ferocious. That dynamic, the active player versus the analyst, is something Draymond was about to weaponize in the most savage way possible. When Draymond Green decided to respond to Austin Rivers on the Draymond Green Show, he didn't come with a gentle rebuttal. He came with a flamethrower. Green said, "I just find it interesting that a guy who was the 10th pick in my draft, I was 35, who's on his second act, I'm still on act 1, would say such things."
Speaking of Austin Rivers, I saw he said he's bewildered and it's ridiculous of what I said. And I just find it interesting that a guy who was the 10th pick in my draft, I was 35, who's on his second act, I'm still on act 1, would say such things. He goes, Draymond, it's never been a scorer.
Let that land for a second. He's pointing out the draft position. You were picked higher than me, you should have had the better career. And he's calling Rivers' media career a second act, essentially saying Rivers is only in front of a camera now because his playing career is done. Meanwhile, Green is still active in the NBA, still on Act 1, as he put it, but Draymond wasn't done, not even close. Green then delivered what many are calling one of the most vicious insults of this entire beef, going all the way back to high school. He said, "Austin, you and I averaged the same amount of points in high school, and I say high school because that's when you were at your best. Should he really talk about my NBA career? That is cold-blooded."
Well, Austin, you and I averaged the same amount of points in high school when you were a scorer. I don't know what would qualify Austin Rivers to speak about scoring when in high school, me and you averaged the same amount of points. And I say high school because that's when you were at your best. Should he really talk about my NBA career?
He is literally telling Austin Rivers that his athletic peak, the best he ever was as a teenager in high school. That after all the hype, after being a top-ranked recruit, after everything, Austin Rivers' ceiling was reached before he ever stepped on an NBA floor. And then Draymond twisted the knife even deeper by bringing in the most personal element of all, Austin Rivers' father, Doc Rivers. Green said, "The guy received the biggest bailout in U.S. history prior to President Trump bailing out the airlines when his dad gave him $42 million.
The guy received the biggest bailout in U.S. history prior to President Trump bailing out the airlines when they needed it. Austin Rivers received the biggest bailout in NBA history, gave him $42 million. And I tip my hat to Doc. I pray.
For context, what Green was referring to is when Doc Rivers, Austin's father, gave him multiple contracts when both were still employed by the Los Angeles Clippers. During that time, the younger Rivers contract was deemed an overpay. It raised concerns in the league back then because Austin was paid like a core player when, truth be told, he was clearly suited up for a role off the bench. Draymond is essentially saying your career, your money, your whole NBA story, none of it was earned. Your daddy handed it to you. That's not a basketball debate anymore. That is personal. That is a gut punch. And Austin Rivers was not going to sit down and take it. Feeling disrespected, Rivers shared a lengthy response that many believed was going to be the final blow in this verbal exchange. He posted it to Instagram and it spread like wildfire. Rivers said, "Come on, Draymond, this is ridiculous, but you know what? I'm going to address it because you crossed the line and you are mad disrespectful for whatever reason. You've been around too long. We both were drafted in the same class."
Come on, Draymond. This is ridiculous. Seriously. Ridiculous, but you know what? I'm gonna address it because you crossed the line and you were mad disrespectful for whatever reason. You've been around too long. We both were drafted in the same class.
Then Austin went right back at the high school comparison and exposed it for what it was. Rivers said, "I was ranked number 1, you were ranked I don't know. You were a really good college player, but it's hard to compare because I was only there for 6 months, something you could never do."
I was ranked number 1, you were ranked I don't know. So cut it out. Next. College, you actually were you actually a really good college basketball player, but it's hard to compare because I was only there for 6 months, something you could never do.
He's saying, "I was so elite coming out of high school that I only needed 6 months of college before I was ready for the NBA. One and done. Duke, top recruit in the country. Something Draymond, who stayed at Michigan State for 4 full years, couldn't come close to matching at that stage. But here is where Austin Rivers said something that stopped everyone in their tracks, something that went viral faster than anything else in this entire feud. He went straight at Draymond's basketball reputation and then hit him with this. Rivers said, "There are hours and hours and hours of film of just you being left wide open. There are clips of you getting a rebound and just driving in a straight line and just getting a wide open layup because everyone's fanning out to guard the actual talent on the team. Talk about Steve Kerr hindered your career. Bro, Steve Kerr made your career. How dare you?"
There are hours and hours and hours of film of just you being left wide open. In fact, anybody can just YouTube or Google or watch any Draymond game ever, and he's open all game. There are clips of you getting a rebound and just driving in a straight line and just getting a wide open layup because everyone's fanning out to guard the actual talent on the team. Talk about Steve Kerr hindered your career. Bro, Steve Kerr made your career. How dare you?
And then, this is the part that everyone is replaying right now. Rivers brought up something that has haunted Draymond Green's career for years, a moment that Draymond has never fully escaped from. Austin said, "Yeah, the NBA doesn't give coaching jobs to guys who may or may not sucker punch one of the players and staff."
Yo, the NBA doesn't give coaching jobs to guys who may or may not sucker punch one of the players and staff. You need to fall back, Dre. Let's just be frenemies.
Let that sink in. He brought up the sucker punch allegation, referencing past incidents in Draymond's career where he's been accused of physical altercations, and used it to explain why Doc Rivers can't be blamed for giving his own son a job, because at least Austin Rivers doesn't have that kind of baggage. That is Austin Rivers saying, "I know where your skeletons are buried, and I am not afraid to point at the closet." Rivers also added, "You always act irrationally and emotionally immature, and your anger always puts you in hot water."
It's you, and I shouldn't be surprised. You always act irrationally, emotionally immature, and your anger always puts you in hot water. So here I am having to address a video of you.
That's not a basketball argument. That's a character assassination, and the internet absolutely erupted. Now here's where this story gets even more interesting, because just when everyone thought this was over, Austin Rivers escalated it to a completely different level. Rivers appeared on the To the Baja podcast and challenged Draymond Green to a one-on-one game. He said, "Why don't you play me one-on-one, Draymond? You can't do handoffs in one-on-one. You can't set no pick and roll in one-on-one, so all that extra talk was BS."
You talk about, "Oh, you need to play Nas one-on-one." But motherfucker, why don't you play me one-on-one, Draymond? Because you can't do no handoffs in one-on-one. You can't set no pick and roll in one-on-one. So all that extra talk is BS, and that's all my response was to.
This is Austin Rivers saying, strip away everything that made you great, the Hall of Famers around you, the system, the picks and rolls and handoffs, and what are you left with? Come prove to me you can compete without all of that, just you and me, one-on-one. Rivers also said he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he deserves that because he put in the work as his role. There's a difference between being a star and being a star in your role. Draymond was a star in his role, one of the best at it. He talks too loosely and he talks with conceit in his voice when he tries to come at other players as if he's better than them. No, you achieved more because you were a star in your role. And a cast that Steve, the guy who hindered your career, placed you in.
He's a first ballot and he deserves that because he put in the work as his role. See, there's a difference, and this is the last thing I'll say. There's a difference between being a star and being a star in your role. Draymond was a star in his role, one of the best at it. He talks too loose and he talks with conceit in his voice when he tries to combat other players as if he's better than them. No. You've achieved more because you were a star in your role, and a cast that Steve, the guy that hindered your career, placed you in and helped you and embraced you.
That is Rivers threading a very fine needle. He's acknowledging Draymond's greatness. He's saying, yes, Hall of Famer, deserved. But there is a difference between being a star and being a star within a role. And when you forget that distinction, when you start talking down to other players like you're something you're not, that's when people are going to check you. The question now is, what does Draymond do with a one-on-one challenge? Because if he ignores it, people will say he's scared. And if he accepts it, he's giving Austin Rivers exactly the stage he wants. So here's where we stand. What started as Draymond Green making a nuanced comment about Steve Kerr on his own podcast has exploded into one of the most personal public feuds between two NBA men in recent memory. We've got high school stats being weaponized. We've got nepotism allegations. We've got sucker punch receipts being pulled out. We've got a one-on-one challenge sitting on the table unanswered. What started as a basketball debate has now spiraled into a full-blown exchange of insults, career comparisons, and personal shots that neither man seems willing to walk back from. And here's what most people are missing in all of this. Neither of these men has actually backed down, not once. Every single time one of them has spoken, they've raised the temperature. There has been no apology, no de-escalation, just round after round of haymakers. So the real question I want to leave you with today is this. Is Draymond going to respond? And if he does he accept the one-on-one? Or does he find something even more personal to throw back at Austin Rivers? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Who do you think is winning this beef? Who landed the hardest punches? And do you think Draymond takes that one-on-one challenge, or does he walk away from it? Because this story is absolutely not over. And when the next chapter drops, you already know we're going to break it all down for you right here. Make sure you're subscribed, because this one is only getting started.